Welcome to the third and final part of my series about gorillas in Salmon Run, the next wave. The first two parts discuss how the wave works, how to use certain weapons and specials, and how the mode is best played on the different maps we have. I'd recommend watching them both if you haven't already, because I feel like this third part doesn't really work without that base knowledge. Now, this video will be slightly different in the sense that I will be discussing things I've learned from experience. What this means is you may not agree with all of it, and certainly none of it is gospel. However, I do think I've racked up quite a lot of experience since 2017, so I do think a lot of it will heavily benefit you if you are newer to the series or just struggle with gorillas. In addition, all of the footage in this video is freelance or going in with only one other player. I hope you enjoy it. Strategies and quotas. Much like regular freelance, I often have the mantra of quota and survive in the forefront of my brain. Gorillas in freelance is, in my opinion, the hardest wave type currently in the game because it depends on teamwork, and without it, you will fail. In most other waves, you can make adjustments or perform in certain ways to mitigate weaknesses from your teammates, but in gorillas, if your teammates aren't on the same page as you, then it is really hard to pass the wave. There are certain things I can do during regular waves that can make everybody's experience a bit easier. I can manipulate boss aggro, I can use height and bombs to quickly defeat enemies, and I can support teammates with pain or damage, but during gorillas, none of these things really make a difference. And more crucially, you can't change much. All you can really do to progress is to defeat the gorillas. So as a result of this part and the next part of the video is a lot more subjective rather than objective, and I want you to remember that. Not everything I say is correct or indisputable. It mostly stems from experience and combined knowledge from the community. Meeting quota during gorillas is obviously the main objective, but to meet quota you need to destroy gorillas. At 2,200 HP, they have one of the highest total HPs of any enemy outside of the king salmonids. The majority of weapons and specials in the game cannot single-handedly destroy them with any pace. Therefore, you need cooperation from your teammates. As a result of their high HP, you'll find that damaging them, stunning them, defeating them, and running the eggs can take a substantial amount of time and ink, and that's if everything goes to plan. If there are disruptions, and there will be, most likely from the small fry, then this takes even longer. I'll discuss the ramifications of time wasting in the next chapter, so for this part, let's discuss the best strategies for winning. There are two crucial pieces of advice I can give you that I think will help you pass gorillas with more consistency in freelance. The first thing that will help is understanding how to stun gorillas with every weapon in the game. I know if you're new to the game, then that sounds almost insurmountable, but actually it isn't as hard as you think. I've given you a lot of basic information in the weapon roles part of this guide, so I won't repeat the information here. You can always go back to that if you need to know numbers or strict roles. But what I will say is that knowing how to use every weapon means that you'll know how to maximize them, and this is often harder with weaker weapons or weapons that have punishing skill ceilings. When you know how to make quote-unquote bad weapons work well, then you know the limitations of what you're able to do, and this is where you can then make decisions based around early stunning, around positioning, and whether you should use specials to help you. When I have to use weapons that are particularly slow at stunning or have poor ink efficiency, then I make choices to benefit the pace of the wave but also my safety. For example, most of the weaker shooters will take longer to either stun or fully defeat a gorilla, so I simply start shooting them earlier. A lot of issues in Salmon Run as a whole can be solved by being more active, and using those weaker weapons will force you to do that. Rollers and blasters have generous AoE, which means I can hit multiple things at once. Chargers often pierce or have very good range. Sloshers have unique ways of hitting enemies, which can make me take higher platforms. Splatoons deal more damage when you crit slash with them. These are all just some examples. But speaking from experience, the way I got better at Salmon Run was by simply playing more, because I got more experience with different weapons, and now I can safely say that I know how to use every weapon in the game to a respectable degree. Skill issues withstanding. Each gorilla needs 400 damage to stun. Every weapon can do this. Obviously some are easier and some are quicker. Knowing how much ink you need, how much time you need, and how many shots you need really does make this easier to pull off more consistently. For example, I know with the E-liter that it is one fully charged shot to stun, as they deal 600 damage. After I've done that, my team usually takes the hint and starts unloading DPS into the gorilla, especially if they now have the safety to do it, and this gives me, as the E-liter, get either the chance to relocate to protect myself, the time to regenerate ink, or the safety to charge up another shot to deal another 600 damage. The second crucial piece of advice I can give you that leads on from knowing how to use weapons is that you should be the player to stun every griller as much as possible. This is, in my experience, the way I pass more waves, and I think it is the biggest issue I see amongst freelancers in my lobby. Sort of a passiveness, maybe waiting, thinking somebody else might do it. Of course, there will be times when you're unable to do this, specifically when you're targeted, and there will be games where you are relentlessly targeted, but this won't always be the case. At any given moment, in a lobby of 4 of you, there is a 25% chance you will be targeted, which means there is a 75% chance you won't be. This is, of course, per griller, and the more grillers that spawn, the more likely it is that you will be targeted at some point. But the point I want to make is that you should take every opportunity to stun a griller where you can. The advice from Mr. Grizz is that if you have a griller targeting you, you should run away and let your friends handle it. And I really do think the majority of players take that advice to heart. Focusing on this and wondering why your teammates keep running is not a viable solution to winning the wave. You cannot control this, but you can stun that griller for them and in turn encourage them to stop running and start fighting. At the beginning of the wave, only 1 griller will spawn at a time until about 13 seconds have passed. Then 2 grillers will start spawning. If I'm not targeted for that first griller spawn at the start of the wave, then I will hunt it down and stun it immediately. Sometimes you will have teammates not follow you, or they'll spam this way and try to lure it closer, but I would encourage you to ignore this and do your best to stun it. Oftentimes in Salmon Run you have to lead by example. A lot of players won't recognise that the time spent standing at the basket means that you don't defeat the easiest griller of the round. At no other point in this wave will you only have 1 griller spawn. If you defeat that first griller within the 13-second time frame, another single griller will spawn. It is only after the clock reaches 87 seconds left that there will always be 2 grillers spawning. 2 grillers is obviously harder to manage than 1, so why would you not take the first 10 or so seconds of the wave to get ahead? At least in my opinion, the first griller is the best indicator of the pace that my teammates want to play at. Of course, if nobody helps me or I am the one that's targeted, then I can't defeat it, and so progress is slower. But all of that is information that I have just learned about my teammates, and it tells me that I will likely need specials and that I will likely need to be more aggressive. I will talk about this in a lot more depth in the next point, but to get more grillers to spawn, you need to be quick and aggressive with defeating the grillers on screen. If I have passive teammates, then I will hard focus on stunning every griller I can. Again, you may have to lead by example here, and it may be harder depending on the comp and the weapon you have, but the less time grillers are spent actively pursuing your teammates and forcing them to become displaced is time spent getting closer to meeting that quota. The earlier you can meet quota, the earlier you can then start focusing on your survival. In regards to meeting quota, each griller will give you 5 eggs, and if you're able to consistently bring the grillers closer to the basket, then it's quite easy to deposit them. It does not matter which weapon you have responsibility to damage the grillers and then deposit eggs, because otherwise how do you expect to pass the wave? Ideally, weapon rolls would allow you to maximize the strengths of your allocated weapons, but this often doesn't happen in freelance, and so you're forced to adapt. Running eggs is integral to passing grillers consistently, especially if you're having to defeat them some ways away from the basket. You'll notice freelancers who have weapons like splatlings and chargers will often not leave a certain area to run eggs, and I understand this to a certain degree why they won't. Oftentimes they might be refilling their ink tank or charging their weapon ready for the next target, and these things are obviously important. But there is never a moment when you don't have a few seconds between grillers to deposit eggs or at least throw them closer to the basket. On most normal tides, you will have substantial downtime to do this. It is harder to do this on high tide as you'll have less time between griller spawns, but this is why you should be quick and why you should spend any downtime running eggs. You don't have to throw the eggs if you don't have the weapon for this. Oftentimes you can refill your ink tank and run eggs at the same time. When you start reaching quotas near hazard level max, you will need to defeat at minimum 7 grillers just to pass the wave and then deposit all of those eggs. Any seconds spent doing nothing means you're giving yourself a harder time later in the wave. If you find your teammates are not keen on running eggs, then you will need to figure out how you can do this without disrupting the flow of the incoming griller spawns. I still think in these situations, you're better off remaining aggressive, especially if quota hasn't been met yet, and so stunning grillers is the best way to take pressure off of yourself and your team. If you're targeted, then you can spend the time you would normally spend waiting for the grillers to come closer to you running eggs. Often you'll just bring the griller to the basket anyway, which is kind of what you want in most situations. If you find that eggs aren't being run because there is simply no safety to do so, then you can make a choice between either using specials to help defeat the grillers or to lure them away. Obviously, this is dependent on whether you are targeted. If you're targeted and your team is trying to deposit eggs, then consider leading the grillers away from them for a brief moment, but you need to remember that this is stalling and it can have negative consequences if you do this for too long. If you are not targeted and you're trying to deposit eggs and your teammates are still bringing grillers towards you without stunning them, then use specials. I guarantee in almost every situation that a special will help you. Talking about specials, I know I've spoken about them already, but it is worth repeating how helpful they are at maintaining pace, helping you recover ink, or giving you a much needed DPS boost. Specials should be used liberally and they help get you out of situations that waste time. The biggest indicator that time is being wasted for me is if there are grillers that are not being stunned, and I have that unfortunate luck of being aggroed most of the time, because in this instance I cannot change much except for hoping that my teammates will stun those grillers. Specials, however, force that change and will make it so that the grillers are stunned and I can stop running and I can start fighting. All that time spent running is time spent not fighting. Think about it. In a 100-second wave, how much time do you spend running, wall clinging, or trying to lure? All of that is likely time wasted because unless you defeat a griller, you won't spawn anymore. Specials will always be a way to help you achieve this. I didn't know where else to put this part specifically, but figured it makes the most sense to go here. From my own personal perspective when playing grillers, I aim to defeat a griller if it is stunned. Allowing a stunned griller to live and carry out another cycle of being needed to stun wastes a lot of time. I appreciate that this is easier said than done. Some weapons simply cannot do this and it is heavily dependent on your team helping you. But wherever I can, I will prioritize a stunned griller just to make sure it doesn't restart up again. You can argue that this isn't the worst outcome. No more grillers spawn in until they have been defeated. So having a half health griller active doesn't exactly change much, but in my experience, a team that cannot swiftly defeat a griller is a team that doesn't realise that being too passive likely means you're going to lose. Just for completeness, I should briefly touch on the issue of desync. Grillers suffers from desync in ways that no other wave can really compare to, and this will often make passing the wave harder. Desync is short for desynchronization, and what it means in a general sense is that what you're seeing on your screen differs from the rest of your team. With grillers, this usually manifests with the griller itself being in a different place to what you're seeing. It's not always clear when this happens, but the biggest giveaway is usually floating or disappearing eggs, or noticing your teammates shooting at what appears to be nothing. Now, there isn't much you can do to mitigate these issues. This is something that affects Splatoon overall, and with the worldwide matchmaking, you'll definitely experience latency issues, and in grillers, it becomes desynced enemy positions. In the event of significant desync, you need to play as though you're heavily disadvantaged, and by this I mean you should shift from wanting to get high scores to just passing. Desynced grillers are impossible for you to stun if you're targeted, and oftentimes you can't lead that exposed tail to your teammates because the griller is somewhere else on their screen. As mentioned before, specials do help. They will allow you to take a breather and stun and defeat grillers quicker, and this may be something you need to do just to pass. Just because one griller is desynced, it doesn't mean the rest will be, and desync usually happens when you're attempting to lure grillers around ledges or platforms. On your screen, the griller may turn around and find a different path, but on your teammate's screen, it may have just gone straight off the edge and gone forward. You can't predict this, and there may be nothing you can do to fix it. My recommendation would be to preserve safety by defeating the grillers as soon as you can. Surviving and stalling. Sometimes surviving means having to stall. I dislike and discourage stalling as a quote-unquote strat, but I know what Freelance is like, and I know sometimes we're forced to play in ways that are not necessarily the recommended way. Just because I'm telling you that Grillas is best played a certain way, it doesn't mean that your teammates will hear me or even agree. And so adapting to that will always succeed over stubbornly refusing to go along with your crew. One of the best but simultaneously most frustrating aspects of Salmon Run is that everybody thinks their way of playing is the most productive, or at the very least, the most correct. And I'm not here to tell you to play only a certain way, because there is no singular correct way to play, and I certainly can't change the minds of 3 people in my lobby who I cannot communicate with. But I want to explain to you why stalling is probably the worst strategy you can do, and how you can play around those trying to force you to do it. The reason I never discuss things like throwing a bomb high to prevent a potential wipe is because, in my opinion, relying on niche technical movement does not benefit you in the long run. Playing well, using specials, understanding map layouts, and preventing a potential wipe is always better. Anyone can throw a bomb into the sky, but what's the point of that if you can't even reach quota? This chapter only makes sense in the context of the rest of the guide too. You cannot discuss stalling and surviving without acknowledging how the wave works, how weapons and specials can help you, and how strategies differ on each map. Without the previous information, you may arrive at this point of the video without much background knowledge to understand why stalling in most situations doesn't benefit you or your team. It is only when you break down a situation, understand how to fully maximize your potential, and recognize limitations, will you understand what I am about to say. All of this to say, if you disagree, that's fine, but I think it's good to recognize that discussing wall clinging or running away in a vacuum doesn't really benefit you. This is why this is the last part of the video. It is only after everything else has been said should we now start discussing behavior and how to adapt to it to win games. Stalling is when you stop being aggressive and start playing defensively. It's done because you need to prioritize your safety or because you're waiting out the clock. I think given everything I've said in these 2 videos so far, it should be obvious that stalling should not be used in place of aggressively taking down Grillas, and you should only stall when the benefits of stalling outweigh the negatives. The reason why stalling is not productive, or in my opinion a reliable strat, is because you're not defeating enemies when you do this. You're allowing the current enemies on the field to remain active, but you're also allowing more to spawn, giving you a worse chance of reducing the pressure that they create. This is a passive style of playing, and passivity in Salmon Run almost never benefits you. Did you hear me say almost? I'll talk about that in a moment, but I really want to impress upon you that stalling and anything that is regarded as passive or time wasting really isn't in your benefit to do. And this is primarily because Salmon Run isn't PvP. It isn't something that mimics your pace. You don't have any way of changing the actions of the enemies, and anytime you choose to make a play that involves leaving enemies alive, you're taking quite a big risk. Running away is stalling. Luring Grillas away from your teammates is stalling. Wall clinging somewhere far away is stalling. Anything that isn't the act of defeating Grillas and putting eggs into the basket should be considered stalling. And I need to explicitly state that stalling should never be the de facto strat. It rarely works, especially in Freelance. When quotas start to reach the 30 mark and higher, it means you need to defeat at minimum 6 Grillas, maybe 7. Stalling means that you won't defeat and subsequently spawn more of those Grillas. The reason why night waves like Grillas are potential high scoring waves is because they are theoretically limitless. As long as you defeat them, more will spawn, and they never cap at a certain amount. If you stop defeating them, they won't spawn more, meaning you're imposing a limitation on yourself. You're probably thinking that in Grillas, the maximum amount of Grillas is 2, and how hard can 2 Grillas be to avoid? It's not so much this. That is the main issue with Rush, actually. The main reason why not defeating the Grillas is risky is because you will only ever have 2 on your screen at one time, meaning that you are preventing more from spawning. This action is not something that you see the ramifications of immediately, but is something that compounds the further you get into the wave. A lot of stalling and that passive style of playing can be avoided by just being quicker with your decision making and subsequently those plays that you make. What I mean by this is that I think, and I may not be correct here, but I think that the reason players stall is because they're not being supported with the aggro that is on them, such as the Grilla that is chasing them, or there are eggs that need to be deposited and it isn't safe to do so. The reason both of these situations happen is because you're just not being quick enough with stunning and defeating the Grillas and then running those eggs. I've said this this in numerous videos, but Salmon Run is a timed mode. Any second spent doing nothing means you're risking being able to pass the wave, and this does include stalling. The main mechanism of stalling is wasting time or waiting out an enemy, but choosing to do this too early means that you're putting more pressure on yourself and your team in the latter part of the wave. So you need to be quicker with your actions, and I think the best way to do this is by making stunning gorillas the absolute priority. Your teammates are stalling because they're scared, I think. A lot of passive play or overwhelming situations can be traced back to not being able to control a situation and just running away. I mean, that is just human nature, right? But it is something that you will often see the consequences of in waves like gorillas. You need to confront the situation in front of you and choose not to do it later. Anytime you choose to make a decision to not stun a gorilla or to not help a small fry is a decision that may impact your teammates more than you. You have to make calculated, sensible decisions, and this is something that isn't easy, but it's not impossible. In my opinion, the way to make this wave easier is to be aggressive immediately. If there are no enemies on your screen, you don't have to worry about taking damage. It really is that simple. I noticed that as soon as players see the red line on them, they start to run. Often they run away because they think they're going to get splatted, and I mean, I get that, but they don't realise that they're making it harder for themselves and their team because, for one, it's harder to hit the exposed tails if you're running around, but also secondly, they're not taking an active role in helping, rather they're just trying to avoid taking damage. I don't expect you to stand in one place and become a martyr for your team, but as we've spoken about, there are ways to safely lead the gorillas towards your team so that they can help hit the exposed tail to stun it. Once it's stunned, you have way more freedom in what you can do and where you can go. This is what you need to do to help your teammates. I never know how good or bad or inexperienced my teammates in Freelance are, but rather than trying to focus on making them better, I choose to focus on making the wave easier. This is something that benefits all of us. Choosing to not put damage on the gorillas does not achieve this and ultimately can cause your teammates to panic, to start burning specials, or to get splatted. I can say all of the above, and I guarantee that you can boot up the game right now, go into Freelance, and you will see your teammates on frame 1 of the gorilla wave go to find somewhere to stall. There's nothing you can do about this, and it'll be a thing forever. It's because inexperienced players don't realise the ramifications of these actions, and a lot of it boils down to them being scared or worried that they will take damage. If you're watching this video, there's a good chance that you care about improving at the game, and you want to make effective decision making. Hi, by the way, thank you for the support, I appreciate it. These guides took me forever, but there's no guarantee that your teammates will do the same or even care, so you have to understand the limitations of almost knowing too much. Your teammates will stall, they always will, you just have to find a way to break through the passive way of playing. As mentioned, being that player to stun the gorillas is, in my opinion, the best way to pass the wave with players who choose to be inactive. They're inactive because they don't know what they're doing, so you need to become active, and this means ensuring that that gorilla is always stunned. In recent times, I've completely shifted the way I play this mode in Freelance. If I had made this video a year ago, I think I'd be telling you something different, and I think it's important to remember that. We change, we grow, we learn more, and so the way we perceive the game and the decisions that we make also change. A year ago, I think I might have told you to focus on your safety as the primary goal, but today I've changed my mind, and I think this is because I've played so much Freelance and have seen the main reason we lose is because of inactivity. Making sure that you stun the gorilla is the best way to combat that inactivity. Maybe in a year's time I might tell you something different, but I think encouraging you to take aggressive positions and making sure that your teammates are safe because you stun the gorillas is never going to be a bad piece of advice. This can be hard if you find yourself repeatedly aggroed by the gorillas and don't have a way to remove that aggro. Remember, only 2 maps allow this, and with the exception of the Inkjet at the end of the Inkjet special, no specials really reliably quickly remove aggro. You're targeted until it's defeated or until you get splatted. Removing aggro is fine if you know what to do with the consequences of it. I often see players do it but then not realise that they're putting their teammates in danger. If you choose to remove the aggro of the gorilla, then you need to be the person to stun it. What is the point of removing the aggro otherwise? It's selfish and high-key kind of silly to expect that your teammates will know what you're doing or how to play around it. I would only remove the aggro if you are a weapon that can quickly stun, can survive well, or if you absolutely know what you're doing. I remove the aggro when I'm in a comp or a situation where I am the primary player that stuns the gorillas, because this way I know I will stun it. Whereas when I have that aggro on me, I'm putting faith in my teammates that they will do it, it. And you know this doesn't always work out. You can help lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And so I can bring the grillers to my teammates who can look at it and choose to run away thinking it's coming for them rather than trying to help me. And so removing that aggro means I can avoid that situation, but I will make sure that I stun it. If you can't remove the aggro and your teammates are not helping you and they're choosing to be inactive or they're struggling against a small fry, then you gotta use your specials. As we've spoken about, any time wasted by stalling and defeating the grillers means that you're not actually doing anything to contribute to the objective, and the way you can force this to change is by using specials. Again, I've already spoken about this, so just refer back to the section for more info, but specials help regain control, they help give space for your teammates to recompose themselves, and obviously they help destroy the grillers. Once the grillers are down, you can run eggs, you can paint over enemy ink, and you can revive your teammates. Surviving, naturally, is easier when there is less pressure on you. What I mean by this is that you can ensure you remove pressure by meeting quota as soon as you possibly can. Being aggressive and stunning those grillers for your teammates will help this. After you reach quota, your priority can then shift to staying alive and waiting out the clock. I won't discourage this because I think sometimes you will have no choice but to do this. I can tell you all day about how it isn't great, but if you're in a lobby with 3 people that don't care about achieving a high score, or they don't care about helping the team, then you will need to shift your priorities and take more or less the same stance as them. You shouldn't fight them here, especially if quota is met, because you know if you just survived the wave, then you've passed. It's easier to stall when you've made quota. If you want to stall, at least make sure that you've met quota first, because then all you need to do is not get splattered. I personally wouldn't recommend this because once all 4 of you start running away instead of shooting your weapons, things can quickly devolve into a mess. The grillers move fast, the small fry are a pain in the ass for certain weapons, and not all maps have places you can run to, especially on high tide. But if this is what your teammates want to do, then you're kind of shit out of luck in terms of being able to regain control. You can help stun the grillers, and you can hope that they help you defeat them, but there are only a handful of weapons in the game that can damage and defeat the grillers with such speed or power that you can single-handedly do this. If you have one of those weapons, then I'd encourage you to always be aggressive and always remove the threat of grillers running freely around the map. If you don't have a weapon like this, then specials, again, are a good way to counteract this. But ultimately, if your teammates are not helping you, then you just need to find a way to survive, and this can mean running around too. I hate to see it, but sometimes you have no choice. Listen, I've played Salmon Run pretty much consistently since Splatoon 2's release in 2017. I think I had something crazy like 5,000 hours in Splatoon 2, and at the moment, I think I'm about 4,000 hours deep into Splatoon 3. I would say 80% of that time has been in Salmon Run, and most of that has been Freelance. Grillers, without a doubt, is the wave I struggle the most with in Freelance, even more than Rush, because I think Rush, at the very least, is more intuitive. It's kind of obvious what you need to do and how the enemies work, right? Grillers, I find, no matter the skill of the players I'm with, I will never cease to be amazed at the strats, to put it nicely, that I see, or the complete lack of understanding of the wave. And none of this is the fault of the player base. The mode isn't explained very well. I often wonder how it feels to be a newbie player again and to load in the game and see grillers for the first time and think, what the hell do I do here? I hope this 3-part guide helps you, even if it's just to reaffirm knowledge that you already have. If you learnt something new, please do let me know. It's good to know how the videos help. As always, it's hard to decide what to keep in these videos and what to leave out. There is more information in the description with a ton of links. Especially in regards to overfishing, there is a lot more to be said about grillers, and that in of itself is a completely different topic, but there are a lot of links, guides, and interactive sources in the description of all the videos. One of the main reasons I'm keen to make videos like this is that the information that I've shared is not widely available. I had to search through lots of Japanese websites, hello, I do not understand a single word of Japanese, and find help in Discord servers, all of which isn't easy or quick to do for most people. So thank you to everybody who's helped me with these videos, even if you've just played games with me or chatted with me. The effort is taken to make sure everything in here is future-proof to a reasonable degree and also factually correct has taken a long time. If there are any mistakes, please do let me know, and I will leave corrections in the description and the pinned comments. Please look here before leaving a comment, as others may have pointed out things prior to you seeing this. For what it's worth, there is never a single right answer to how to play Salmon Run. As I've mentioned, it's kind of the best and most frustrating thing about it. I'll see you guys soon.